All right, ready to dive into a huge question. What really makes art? Art. Like not just the Mona Lisa or Beethoven's Fifth, but the whole wide world of it.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And this time, we're using a video from the art assignment. They call it the definition of art. But get this.
They don't even really give you one.
Right, it's more like, buckle up, we're gonna explore why art is so hard to pin down.
Which is kind of the beauty of it when you think about it. Trying to nail down art is like trying to grab smoke.
Totally. They start off by poking holes in those classic definitions, like, does it have to be made by humans? What about those birds who build super intricate nests?
That's where intention gets interesting, right? Is the bird thinking masterpiece or just got to keep these eggs safe?
And even if the bird's not thinking about art, we might look at that nest and be like, whoa, that's gorgeous.
Huh.
Does that make it art then?
Makes you wonder if we're putting meaning onto something that's just nature taking its course.
True. And then there's the whole idea of beauty. Does art have to be pleasing to the eye? This video uses Thomas Hirschhorn, you know, those installations of his.
Oh yeah, he uses all sorts of everyday objects, right?
Yeah.
Makes you think more than it makes you go, oh, pretty.
Exactly. It's thought-provoking, for sure, like some modern art, you know. Sometimes it's more about the idea than it being something you'd want on your wall.
It's challenging what we expect from art, pushing those boundaries.
Then there's that old saying, art imitates life. Goes back to Seneca, but they show this Namjoon Paik piece, Magnet TV, basically a TV with a magnet messing up the image.
And suddenly, imitating life doesn't seem so straightforward anymore.
Right, especially with all the tech we've got now.
Seneca couldn't have imagined how tech would change the game. Like, Paik isn't just capturing reality with that TV, he's messing with it, making us question what we're seeing.
So it becomes about the tech too, not just using it.
Exactly.
Which kind of leads us to Aristotle saying, art completes nature, like it adds another layer to what's already there.
Think about those landscape paintings, right? They're not just copying what they see,
They're adding their own style, their own feelings to it.
trying to capture the essence of a place, make you feel something when you look at it.
Like those sunsets you see and you're like, no photo could ever do this justice.
Huh. Sometimes nature's the ultimate artist. There's even that quote from Marc Chagall, something like, why bother competing? Look at a flower. Can you really improve on that?
You gotta respect that humility, you know? Art doesn't have to outdo the universe.
Sometimes it's about just appreciating it, letting it inspire you.
And sometimes art's about building entirely new worlds. They talk about this world building using Paul Klee. Art doesn't reproduce the visible, rather it makes visible.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And then there's Bertolt Brecht. Totally different vibe. Art is not a mirror held up to reality, but a hammer with which to shape it.
Two sides of the same coin, kind of. Klee saying art shows us what's hidden, Brecht saying it can change how we see everything.
And they both point to how powerful art can be. It can really mess with your worldview if you let it.
Totally. It's about challenging our perceptions,
Mm.
pushing us beyond the everyday.
And they give some cool examples. Toyin Ojii Odutola using portraits to imagine different histories, and Helio Waitisika creating those installations that are like stepping into another reality.
Yeah.
Ever felt that with art? Where it's like you're transported somewhere else completely.
Oh yeah, like you walk into a gallery and suddenly you're in a different world, different rules. It's powerful stuff.
And that takes us to this idea of art as escape. Like Chinua Achebe said, it's man's constant effort to create for himself a different order of reality,
It's getting away from the everyday without actually going anywhere.
which can be really freeing when you think about it.
Absolutely.
Like getting lost in a good book, you know? The rest of the world just fades away.
Totally. And that's not even always about escaping to somewhere else, but escaping the limits of, well, you.
Mm-hmm.
The video even quotes Twyla Tharp on this. Art is the only way to run away without leaving home.
Ooh, I like that. Makes you think about art as this space where you can be totally free. Try on different ideas, feelings, no judgment. Like, they quote John Galsworthy, he called it a profound enfranchisement, which sounds kind of intense, but
But that makes sense, right? Art can break you out of your own head, even if just for a little bit.
it's like a mini vacation for your brain.
Exactly. And that ties into art's power to connect us, which the video gets into next. They use John Dewey, who was big on this, saying art's the most effective mode of communication that exists.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
Right. But think about it. A song, a painting, it can reach millions across languages, cultures.
It's true. A catchy tune is a catchy tune no matter where you're from.
Exactly. And Dewey was big on the audience's role. said a work of art isn't really complete until it interacts with someone experiencing it. They even jokingly mentioned penguins appreciating art.
Penguins. Okay, now I want to see that exhibit.
Huh. But it does make you think we all respond to visuals, right? Colors, shapes, even if we don't speak the same language.
And then there's that great metaphor they use from James Turrell. He called art a completed pass.
Ooh, I love that.
Like in basketball, you need the thrower and the catcher.
Precisely. Artist puts the idea out there, but it's up to us to catch it, to make it mean something. It's not just a one-way street.
That's so cool. Makes you think differently about just passively looking at a painting or something.
It's a two-way conversation, even if the artist's long gone.
And in that conversation, we can step into someone else's shoes, right? See the world through their eyes. It's like that saying, but you don't have to actually wear someone else's stinky shoes.
Exactly. The video uses this Thomas Merton quote, how art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time, which is kind of deep.
But it's true. You see something new and it makes you question what you think, your own experiences.
It's about recognizing our own humanity and what we're seeing, hearing, experiencing.
And sometimes you see a side of yourself you didn't even know was there. Like Louise Bourgeois said, art is a way of recognizing oneself, which is why it will always be modern.
Meaning, even art from ages ago, it can still resonate with us now because we're still human, dealing with the same stuff.
That's powerful. Speaking of time, they bring up that old saying, ars longa, vita brevis. Art is long, life is short. It's kind of heavy.
But hopeful in a way too, right? That something we make could outlast us, keep speaking to people long after we're gone. The video uses Kerry James Marshall. He talks about wanting his work to have an indispensable presence even after he's gone. Makes you think about your own legacy, what you want to leave behind.
It's a big question. And it kind of ties into that Gerhard Richter quote they have calling art the highest form of hope.
Oh, yeah. Like the very act of creating is an act of optimism,
Yeah.
that what you're making matters, that it'll have some impact on the world.
It reminds me of that William Faulkner quote, how the artist arrests motion, which is life, so that 100 years later, it moves again since it is life. Like they're freezing a moment, a feeling.
And then we come along and it comes alive for us, even if it's from a totally different time.
Like time travel, but with feelings. And it's not just about different times, but different viewpoints, too. I remember seeing this one installation, won't bore you with the details, but
But it stuck with you.
it totally changed how I thought about this one social issue. Like, whoa, never looked at it that way before.
That's art's power to build empathy, right?
Yeah.
It makes us see things from perspectives we might not have considered otherwise.
Like it breaks down those walls we put up between each other just by helping us understand a little better. And they talk about art as sustenance even, like literally keeping us going. They quote Sarah Sluz calling it sustenance for both artist and audience.
And then there's Dorothea Tanning's famous one. Art has always been the raft onto which we climb to save our sanity.
Heavy stuff. But haven't you felt that? Like art can be this refuge when things get rough.
Oh, absolutely. Whether you're creating it or experiencing it, art can be incredibly healing, therapeutic even.
It's like that breath of fresh air Annie Albers talked about, how art is something that makes you breathe with a different kind of happiness. And it's not always happy, happy, joy, joy, but
It's more like feeling alive,
yeah.
engaged with the world, even if what you're engaging with is tough.
And sometimes that comes from expressing tough stuff outward, They talk about art as catharsis, letting it all out.
Which can look a million different ways depending on the artist. They contrast Henry Ward Beecher, who's all, every artist dips his brush in his own soul.
Sounds very gentle and poetic.
Right. Then they've got Jörg Baselitz, who's like, art is visceral and vulgar. It's an eruption.
Totally different vibe. Like art can be quiet and contemplative, or it can be loud and messy. And there's room for it all, right? Like no one way to make art or express yourself is the right one. Speaking of which, Edvard Munch. Art grows out of grief and joy, but mainly grief. Kind of his whole deal, right?
He really went there with the heavy emotions. But it's true. Some of the most powerful art comes from those dark places, working through tough experiences.
Like taking something painful and turning it into something you can share, Ever seen a piece that just felt like raw emotion poured out onto the canvas or whatever?
Yeah, it can be a lot, but there's something about it.
Yeah.
Like it makes you feel less alone in those feelings. And even in the darkness, there can be this sense of release. Like they quote Christo in the video, the work of art is a scream of freedom.
Which is so interesting because his work wasn't like people literally yelling. It was those huge installations, right? Wrapping buildings, changing whole landscapes.
There's a statement for sure. Like art saying, I'm going to do what I want, how I want.
Not just expressing a feeling, but expressing that freedom itself. And sometimes it's less about raw emotion, more about ideas, like they talk about with Ralph Waldo Emerson. He called art the conscious utterance of thought by speech or action to any end is art. Kind of makes you think.
Yeah, because by that definition, so much could be art.
Like making a delicious meal, designing a garden, even writing code. If it's done with intention, with thought behind it.
Then it's art. That opens things up, doesn't it?
Totally. And then they get into conceptual art, right? Where the idea is the artwork, even if it never gets made into a physical thing.
Like Sol LeWitt, he was big on that. Makes you flex those brain muscles a bit.
It's art in your head. But even with all the seriousness, the video also has these fun quotes about art being playful too. Ed Ruscha saying it should make you scratch your head.
Love that one.
And then Marshall McLuhan, art is anything you can get away with. Little mischief never hurt anyone.
Especially in art, it's about pushing those boundaries.
Yeah.
Right? Taking risks.
Which is scary, but like Francis Ford Coppola said, an essential element of any art is risk. If you don't take a risk, then how are you going to make something really beautiful that hasn't been seen before?
Ooh, I like that one.
Makes you think about the artists who really moved you. They probably were going out on a limb somewhere. And you got to be open to that too as the audience. Be willing to be surprised, even a little confused.
That's where the good stuff happens, you know, when art shakes you up a bit. And they talk about this tricky thing with art and truth too. Using Picasso, art is a lie that makes us realize truth.
So cryptic, Picasso.
Huh. But he had a point. And then they've got Adorno's take, how it's magic delivered from the lie of being truth. It's a mind bender for sure.
It's like art can mess with how we see the world, but in a way that reveals something deeper. Not always literally true, but emotionally true.
Exactly. It hits you in a different way. Like Wangechi Mutu said, it's about imbuing truth with a kind of magic.
And that magic, it can be powerful, right? Think about how art changes minds, starts movements. It's not just pretty pictures, it can do stuff in the world.
Throughout history, art's been this incredible force. For better or worse, it leaves its mark.
And the best part is, it's always changing, which keeps it exciting. Like that Albert Hubbard quote, art is not a thing, it is a way.
Ooh, yeah. It's alive, constantly evolving, just like us.
So trying to pin it down with one definition is kind of pointless.
I'm boring. What is the fun in that?
Exactly. And the video ends on this great note. They call art a habit-forming drug.
Which, let's be real, it kind of is. Once you start seeing the world through that lens, noticing art everywhere.
It's hard to stop. And why would you want to? There's always something new to discover, to be moved by.
So to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep letting art surprise you. You never know what you might find.